call the meeting of the June 25th meeting of the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors to order. We'll begin with a pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As a reminder to those out in the audience here that this meeting is recorded. The microphone is audio and video recorded. It's right over near Cheryl. And this will be available on the government channel produced by WQLN. It's channel 1025 on Spectrum, and it's also available on YouTube. Closed captioning is available on both of those formats, those media sources. So just turn on the closed captioning if you are hearing impaired. Moving on to item number 3, public comment on agenda items other than development or rezoning applications. Do we have any comments, public, regarding that? Being none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Item number 4. This is from our last meeting on the 11th. Any questions, comments, corrections? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the June 11th minutes.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. The bills, we had a batch of bills there. Any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll move to approve the bills.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Moving on, excuse me. Bids and quotations. Since our DPW director is not here tonight, I'll take care of this one. Landscaping for Tamarack Drive. This is for the storm sewer project. This is to finish that out due to the excavations that were going on, so we need to get the landscaping completed. Bids were sought, or quotes were sought from 3 different companies. Manzi Services provided a quote of $7,945. Okay, we've only got 2 quotes, I'm sorry. The second quote was from Gerlach's Garden and Power Equipment at $5,332. Gary's recommendation, it would be to hire Gerlach's Garden and Power to complete the landscaping project for the Tamarack Drive sewer, storm sewer replacement. I'll put that in the form of a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, the next one, let's see, announcement and award of Millcreek Golf and Learning Center Clubhouse ADA project. This comes from Planning and Development. Matt Waldinger.
Thank you. In accordance with our ongoing consent decree, we are continuing to upgrade our facilities to meet current ADA standards. The Millcreek Golf and Learning Center requires a compliant parking area and a sidewalk to access the clubhouse. Our department solicited 3 quotes for the work. We received quotes from Maya Brothers Incorporated for $10,900, Vavala Concrete for $15,822, and Amendola Development for $13,515. It is the recommendation of Township Engineer Ann Sokol that we award the contract to Maya Brothers Incorporated for the quote of $10,900.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion on that contract.
Matt, do you know offhand if this is under the budget for this project? Are we getting a cost savings, or is it a little over?
We didn't have one specifically for this project. I believe we had
the overall
compliance
ADA line.
altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where we stand.
Yeah, there wasn't a
on
line.
that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
If I could, John, I think there was a comment on the thing about the budget being like 13,000.
That's what I'm showing as
Okay,
well.
yeah, I didn't see it. Okay.
That was page 31.
That probably was Ann Sokol's estimate.
Her
on the
internal estimate,
construction.
yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, right, there we go. Yeah, that was her estimate on that there, so.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yep.
Okay, do I hear a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to award the contract to Maya Brothers.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes on that. Next bid quotation is announcement of engineering services for stormwater overflow detention basin. This comes from Planning and Development again.
Yes, unfortunately, we received no bids for this quote, so we will go back to the drawing board and see if we can work with bidders to come up with someone who can meet our specifications.
Okay, so no interest from anybody outside there.
Is this with the revised schedule still, Matt?
Yes, this was with the revised schedule. A couple bidders thought it was still a little too tight given the wet weather that we have to get it completed.
Okay.
So we'll work with them and try and see what we can do as far as schedule-wise to, it may take longer to get the design work done, but still target a construction date of next summer.
I see.
Apparently what they were saying was that the drillers that are needed to do the cores and so forth are really behind schedule because of the way the weather was for them in the spring. So
I see.
unfortunately, that even with us revising and pushing our dates back a couple more months, it didn't seem to help.
Okay. I believe we're going to probably pursue this again or come up with a revised schedule again on this, try to get something, get somebody to nibble on it.
Yeah, we will definitely work. And as I said, we may have to push back our design schedule, but still hold our construction schedule for next summer.
Okay. Okay. Sorry to hear that. Okay, and that's sort of no action on that agenda item there. Moving on, item number 7 is a public hearing on a small subdivision plan. Let's see here, it's the hammocks at Millcreek. Small subdivision, a small subdivision plan to show the creation of parcel B1 and parcel B2, having acreages of 3.942 and 5.236 respectively, located along the west line of Old Zook Road and the intersection of West Grandview Boulevard and Track 78. Mr. Waldinger.
Thank you. At their regular meeting of June 4th, 2019, the Millcreek Township Planning Commission recommended approval of the subdivision with several conditions. One simple condition is that the developer provide an easement agreement reflecting what are now parcels A, B1, and B2. There are also 4 other conditions that we worked with the solicitor on, and I think he can explain better once I read them, but I'm going to read those 4 conditions into the record now, and those conditions need to be listed on the Mylar before it is recorded. Condition 1, the plan is approved solely at applicant's request to facilitate financing and does not alter or affect the prior land development plan approval or any requirements or conditions imposed on the land development plan approval. 2, a modification from the street frontage regulation is granted as this is approved solely to facilitate financing and does not alter the prior land development plan approval. 3, the development shall be accomplished and maintained or operated as a single development as per the land development plan as approved. And 4, any transfer of either parcel A, parcel B1, or parcel B2 shall be subject to the requirements as set forth on the approved land development and subdivision plans. If, on the developer's request, parcel A, parcel B1, or parcel B2 is to be sold independently of one another, and all of the other conditions imposed on this approval have been met, and such proposed owner is joined on all documents deemed necessary by the township to ensure development and use as a single development, the township shall approve such transfer upon joinder of owners as parties to financial security related documents.
Okay.
Well, that sounds really simple.
Yeah, those are the conditions.
This is that meeting I walked in late for, isn't it? Would you mind briefing me on this one, Mr. Shaw?
Sure.
Seems a little complex for a subdivision, for a
This is
supposedly small subdivision.
This is a previously approved subdivision that, I think it relates to the hammocks. And at some point, several years ago, in order to accommodate some financing issues that they had, the parcel was divided into parcel A and parcel B. And at that time, these similar conditions were imposed on the hammocks for purposes to allow them to subdivide that to enable them to do the financing they needed to do. They've come back now and need to do a similar thing with respect to parcel B, and are dividing parcel B into parcel B1 and B2, again, simply for financing purposes. I believe B1 and B2 have,
I guess I'm not sure if
have
you meant
different structures on them.
simply for finance purposes. These are going to be subdivisions, though. These are separate parcels that we are approving.
correct. For purposes of as I understand, B1 and B2 are going to house separate apartment complex buildings, and they want to finance them separately, or need to finance them separately, and so subdividing it would enable them to do that.
Okay, my next question is modifications to street frontage regulation. Is that not in the zoning ordinance, and is that something we can grant? Isn't that a variance?
It's in both. It's in the zoning ordinance and the SALDO as well.
Is there a question pending?
No, that's,
And the intent of the language is to ensure that effectively it stays as one parcel, even though it's been subdivided for financing purposes, so that they can't sell it off, and they can't sell off the individual parcels.
Maybe Mr. Sanford can
I
shed
was
some
just
light
going to say that,
on
'cause
this,
is
what's
there-
become somewhat of a complex subject
Is
here.
there anyone here to speak on behalf of this matter?
Yes, Mike Sanford, 4721 Atlantic Avenue. I'm the surveyor that prepared the plan.
Okay.
It is as it's just been described. It was subdivided previously. It is a subdivision, but it was subdivided for financing, an arrangement, financing arrangement. And so this is just a subdivision again for financing. It is a subdivision. But the notes as were imposed on the previous plan are substantially similar to this plan. As Mark said, essentially keeping it in one ownership. So it's a subdivision, but there's reciprocal easement agreement, an REA, that allows for cross-parking, cross-access, cross-use of the driveways, and that's a recorded document. And that's the first condition that the Planning Commission requested or imposed, is that the REA be updated to reflect not parcel A, B, but A, B1, and B2. So there is an REA that provides the accessibility, the parking, everything. It will function as one land development, essentially. People who live there won't know the difference. It's three tax lots for financing. But essentially, it's one land development.
Mr. Walder, any further comments on your end on this?
No, I think it's been covered fairly well. Attorney Shaw looked it over, and it will, as Mr. Sanford said, be operated as one unit. They still have to abide by all of the land development regulations. None of those are altered, and the ownership stays the same across all parcels.
Were there any comments at the Planning Commission meeting from the public?
No, no one appeared to speak.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? This, from the board? Anybody in the audience that would like to speak in this matter? Okay. I think that's it. No questions or comments from us, Mr. Sanford. We look kind of bewildered here, I know, and I guess I'll just ask, this is the elephant in the room. Was this was done for convenience and was maybe, a prior, in other words, taking what was existing and making it a little different? Is that what's being done here?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I mean, what was done previously was, they had a subdivision that had been approved.
Okay.
I think as they've developed their apartment building complexes, they financed them differently, and as a result, it's triggered the need to, they financed the one, wanted to split off so that the next one they financed only pertained to that parcel that they're financing, and proceeded in that fashion. So I think that as this next phase of the development approached, they needed to, they were following that same approach, subdividing it further, that one parcel B into parcel B1 and B2 to accomplish that same financing effort that they did the first time around. So the language that's used here tracks the language that was approved the previous time that they went forward. We reviewed the language and reviewed the saldo and did not find anything that would preclude it from occurring.
Okay, so this would still be deemed as proper then?
Yes.
It's not contrary
Yeah,
to
this,
the zoning ordinance or
we
subdivision?
didn't find anything as to that it was a workaround the saldo. in any
Doesn't it
fashion.
establish landlocked parcels, or am I not understanding the plan, or are you saying the easements are what we're requiring, so it's not landlocked? Or does it have frontage? I just don't, I'm looking at the plans now.
Parcel B1 would have no frontage. Parcel A and parcel B2 both have frontage.
Okay.
By virtue of the REA reciprocal easement agreement that is noted and shown on the plan, it does have access to the public roads through the REA.
Okay. Okay. Hypothetical question. Say, for example, one of these parcels with a building on it is sold off. They will still have a perpetual easement to access that property, and they wouldn't find themselves being locked out of there. I'm with John Morgan on this one. That we seem like it's being created a landlocked parcel of land. Just want to make sure that we're not harming anybody. Obviously, we've had this before on this here. It's, in my opinion, kind of unusual. That's just my thought on it there, but I don't know.
I believe once the easement's recorded, it would run with the land, not necessarily the property owner, so.
Right, but, recorded in perpetuity on that.
Right.
As a condition of any sale. Okay. Anybody else? John, Jim, any questions? Matt, is there anything else you can tell us that may give us some guidance on it?
No, other than, it
Okay.
has been reviewed, and it is something that was done previously on this parcel. They're just asking for another subdivision in the same
Okay.
process.
Okay.
So, Mr. Waldner, you and your team and Mr. Shaw are comfortable with the language and the conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Sanford, anything you want to add? So do you have said anything that's pertinent to it?
At the
Okay.
onset of this, the developer did come into the township, or talk with the township
Okay.
engineering staff about what he wanted to do and so forth. So he didn't just submit the plan without the discussion ahead of
I
time.
see.
Because it is unique, it is
Very.
different. So he did speak to the township engineering department. They talked to Mark, and they had a comfort level with what was going on. And that's
Okay.
why the plan was ultimately submitted. I want to let you know it wasn't just
Wasn't
submitted
thrown in there,
and a
okay.
shock to the township. It was something that was pre-discussed.
Okay. Okay, then. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford.
Okay. I need to hear a motion on this and hopefully a second on that.
I'll make a motion to approve this subdivision plan.
Okay, do I hear a second on that there?
I'll second with the conditions as listed in the Planning Commission report.
Okay, you're good with the conditions on
Yes,
that there,
I'm good with the
obviously, so the recommendation. Okay, so we have a first and then also a second on that there. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes on this one. Okay. Item number 8, land development exclusion requests for the M Cafe parking lot addition. Matt Waldinger.
Thank you. M Cafe, which is located at 5410 Westlake Road, is proposing to build an 8,420 square foot parking lot addition. There will be no structures involved with this addition. It is parking lot only. As per the Millcreek Township Code, Section 12547, it does meet the threshold where they can request an exclusion from a land development. It's above 5,000 square feet, but under 10,000. So it'd be up to the board to grant an exclusion from going through the land development process. That does not exclude them from having to follow regulations regarding stormwater, zoning regulations, tree planting, anything else that's required of the township. As a matter of fact, they have already submitted a stormwater management plan to GPI for review and would not be able to continue until that was approved.
Okay.
So at this time, they are requesting that the board grant that exclusion, and it's a recommendation of Township Engineer Ann Sokol that that be granted.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Walding, I'm curious, without a land development plan, how can we approve their parking plan? Now that parking requires landscaping, and how do we ensure that they're actually complying with stormwater if we don't have any kind of a triggering effect for your office to review?
They have
curious.
submitted a full set of construction drawings with their stormwater management, including a site plan, so we're able to verify all of that before they can begin construction.
Okay.
Yeah, here they're showing it on the one plan here. Actually, there's the complete view. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion on that. That would be to exempt the MCAFE parking lot addition from land development requirements, but still comply with everything else. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve that request for exclusion.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
Vote yes?
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay. Item number 9 is notification of exclusion from a land development for 2308 Kozlowski Drive. Matt Waldinger.
Thank you. Yes, this is also an exclusion. This was submitted by First Student, located at 2308 Kozlowski Drive, just north and west of the township building here. They are proposing to install a 680 square foot trailer and a deck. This would be used for the bus drivers to get out of the weather in the mornings or in the afternoons before and after their runs. This does, under the same section, 12547, qualify as an administrative exclusion. My office can grant this exclusion under 5,000 square feet with the engineer's approval. She has reviewed it because of the small size and the nature. It's basically, the trailer is barely larger than the buses that are currently parked right there. So we have granted this exclusion, and this is just on the agenda to notify the board that we have done so.
Okay. Okay, questions or comments from the board? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I don't,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you
sorry,
need
we
to
don't
vote on
need that.
this.
I'm sorry.
It's just a
This is just
notice.
notification. I'm
Correct.
sorry. I stand corrected on that. Okay.
I do want to ask,
Qu-
this
question
still
or
falls under stormwater management,
they-
still falls under, I mean,
yes.
so
But
they're
actually
they're constructing something, so it goes to BIU for inspection, or is it
Yes,
a trailer?
they still have to get
gonna
all required permits. That no stormwater would be required because of the small size, and it's already on existing impervious surface.
Okay.
But yes.
Thank you, Mr. Walding.
Okay. Jim, do you have any questions?
No, he
Okay.
answered it. Thank you.
Okay. Move on to item number 10, proposed ordinance 2019-10, an ordinance to amend Millcreek Township zoning ordinance 2011-8 as amended by changing the classification of a certain parcel of land situated in the township of Millcreek, which describes as follow: 1920, 1960, 1980, 2020, 2022, 2040, 2052 Edinburgh Road, 2042, 2060, 2065 Interchange Road, 940 Millcreek Plaza, 654 Millcreek Mall, Unit 400, and 5859 Peach Street here in Erie, now Zone C2 to be rezoned to C4 Regional Commercial District. I believe we did have the hearing on this, and the testimony is closed.
Yes.
That was on the June 11th meeting, and we closed the testimony on that. So now our official action is to take action on it. So with everything that was presented, I need to hear a motion on what we're going to do on this matter.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve these rezonings. This is consistent with our comprehensive plan, with the future land use plan, and this action will actually put the entire Millcreek Mall complex under a common zoning district, as opposed to right now where it's split zoned.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes on that. Okay. Moving on, item number 11, proposed ordinance 2019-11, an ordinance with Millcreek Township authorizing the incurrence of a non-electoral debt by the township pursuant to Local Government Unit Debt Act as amended through the issuance of the Township's General Obligation Note Series C of 2019 in the principal amount of not to exceed $325,000. This will be known as the note, providing the issuance of the note, appointing a sinking fund depository, setting forth the maturity, rate of interest, and redemption provisions for the note and the form of the note, providing for the registration, transfer, and exchange of the note, awarding the note to the purchaser thereof, authorizing execution and delivery of the note, covenanting to pay debt service on the note, and pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the township for payment thereof. Let me catch my breath. Establishing a sinking fund and the settlement account, providing for covenants regarding federal income tax matters, authorizing the preparation and filing of a debt statement, borrowing base certificate, debt exclusion proceedings, and a transcript of the proceedings for the issuance of the note, providing that this ordinance shall be a contract with the holder of the note, authorizing certain additional actions, designating the note as a qualified tax-exempt obligation, and repealing inconsistent ordinances. Who wrote this?
I have a feeling Mr. Shaw billed us by the word on
my
this one.
God.
By the character mark? Is this necessary?
This is all about a note. Wow, let me get a drink here. Okay.
That was a filibuster.
Oh, my goodness, that actually is what you call the title.
I thought
of
that
this
was
thing.
special orders there.
I don't think I have anything to add.
Nothing? I think you said it all there. Anyway,
Essentially, this is this is an ordinance that's required by the Local Government Unit Debt Act. Its purpose is to purchase and acquire a 2019 International 4300 SBA chassis and Johnson VT 651 DS sweeper equipment package, and the Wayne Engineering PUP side load refuse body. The township's going to be borrowing, as indicated, $325,000 from Erie Bank, plus fees, I believe, of $600 at a rate of 3.09% for a term of 60 months. The loan can be repaid at any time without penalty. And this is ordinance is part of the process to get the debt approved by the PA Department of Community and Economic Development under the Local Government Unit Debt Act, which places borrowing limitations on municipalities, so they have to approve when you borrow to make sure you're within your limitations. And at the moment, the township is well below its limits, and the ordinance authorizes the various actions that are necessary to incur the debt and comply with the act.
okay.
So,
Just add, this is basically is your department trying to kind of cash flow some of our larger capital expenses
That's
rather
correct,
than
yes.
eating it up in one budget, essentially, right?
Yes.
so it spreads it out essentially over a 5-year period to improve cash flow.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Do not ask me to read that again. Okay, do I hear a motion on that action?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-11.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Item number 12, new and amended ordinances under review. Mr. Shaw, any
I
comments?
think the only pending one under review right now is the sign ordinance, which will be up for a vote on at the July 9 meeting. It's an update and streamlines various technical requirements relating to signs in the different zoning districts. It is on the township website, available for public review, and so a hearing will be held during the next meeting, at which point afterwards it will be presented to the supervisors for a vote.
Okay. Sounds good. Item number 13, Resolution 2019 R32. It's a resolution pursuant to Resolution 2015 R20 and the Municipal Records Manual to approve the proposed disposition of certain township records. This comes from Chris Filson, our IT Director over in the Police Department, Requesting permission to delete, when they become matured, MPD dash cam videos to be deleted from the dates June 26th through July 9th, and is due to reaching the end of the required retention period. This is our typical one that we do every 2 weeks. That's what he's putting in as a request. I'll put that in the form of a motion to approve that. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Let's see here. Item number 14, Resolution 2019 R33, a resolution of the Millcreek Board of Supervisors adopting towing rules and regulations in accordance with Millcreek Township Code Section 137-29 and adopting towing rates in accordance with the Millcreek Township Code Section 137-28. Mr. Shaw.
Sure. At the last supervisor meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved changes to the various towing provisions found in the code. Those changes included modifying how the township arranged for the towing of vehicles in the township directed by the Township Police Force. In place of entering into contracts with specific vendors, we're now going to have a vendor approval process under which any qualified vendor can participate so long as they comply with certain rates and rules and regulations established by the township. Resolution 2019 R33 establishes those rates and rules and regulations that would govern the towing and storage of vehicles in Millcreek Township. Specifically, the rates proposed are as follows. For a standard tow for passenger and light trucks in non-crash situations, it's $105. In crash situations, $115. And if a flatbed is needed for either of those situations, there would be an additional charge of $15. Inside storage will be $35 per day. Outside storage, $25 per day. Special tows, which would include things such as if the vehicle's submerged or if they have to dig a vehicle out of deep snow and so forth, would be $80 an hour for that additional effort. And storage on township property is $25 a day for vehicles owned by third parties. And if they have to come after hours to release a vehicle to someone whose vehicle was towed, there's going to be an additional one-time fee of $25. So when someone shows up at 2 a.m. to get their car, they're going to pay a little extra to do so for that privilege. Under the rules and regulations, the interested vendors must submit a completed application as well as submit proof of insurance and a signed copy of the rules and regulations agreeing to comply with all rules and regulations. The regulations establish the standards that approved companies must meet, including the equipment needed for towing, having the proper insurance, as well as secure storage areas. It also provides for annual police department inspection to ensure that the standards are being met. The rules and regulations establish standards for call responsiveness and continue the existing duty list concept under which specific approved companies rotate duty in the various assigned zones by the departments. They also include a requirement that the approved companies indemnify and hold the township harmless for any claims that arise as a result of the towing activities. And the rules and regulations also include billing procedures that must be followed.
Okay. Sounds good.
And these were arrived at through discussions with the chief and his staff, as well as looking at the pre-existing contract agreements that existed, as well as the prior set of rules and regulations. So they generally track. We try to streamline them a little bit and update them where necessary.
Okay. Okay. Questions or comments? I know you guys put a lot of work into that there, you and the chief, and thank you for doing that. If not, I'll entertain a motion if we don't have any questions.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2019-R-33.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Item number 15 is Resolution 2019 R34. It's an application for county aid for liquid fuels tax funds for the purchase of road salt. Let's see here. The allocation requested that we're looking for, but we need to get this application in for county aid, is $82,178. That's what we're looking for. Is that correct, Cheryl? Okay, that's what I thought. I was reading that right there. $82,178, and that is to put our application in for liquid fuels tax aid. I'll put that in the form of a motion. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll
Oh.
second.
You beat me to it.
Do you have a question?
No, I was in a second.
Okay.
Beat me to it, all right.
Okay,
Beat you to it.
who's going to do it?
I'll do it.
Okay, Jim Bach, okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Yes for me.
Okay, and I also vote
There
yes.
was an inquisitive look in the audience. So the county receives liquid
Yeah.
fuel funds as well as municipalities do from the state.
Yeah.
And what the county does is, since they don't own any infrastructure, they issue it by formula to all of the municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to actually apply for our share. So 82,000 is the total share that the county
Yeah.
allocates to Millcreek Township, but we have to actually formally submit an application to receive it to meet the state regulations for it.
Yeah, yeah, the county gets, what, 249,000, and of that, we get 82.
No,
Yeah,
the 249 is what we spent on road salt.
Yeah.
And we're getting $82,000 towards that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah,
Yep,
the county cuts, I want to do $500,000 what the county gets, I
Yeah.
think.
okay. Okay, moving on to item number 16, PADEP application for reimbursement. This is for the Mill Fair Special Collection. This comes from Jessica Stutzman, who heads up our recycling department. The recycling department is seeking reimbursement from the PADEP Household and Small Business Pollution Prevention Grant. First stage of the grant application process granted Millcreek Township permission to hold a special collection event for recycling residential household hazardous waste. Roughly 380 pounds of auto batteries, 4,980 pounds of appliances, 272 pounds of propane tanks, and 20,700 pounds of tires were recycled. Other items that were recycled but not weighed included construction and demolition waste, textiles, and paper shredding of sensitive documents. The recommendation is the recycling department recommends approval of the PADEP Household and Small Business Pollution Prevention Grant, which requires the supervisor's signature. At the event, $2,257 in drop-off fees were collected from the residents. In the reimbursement grant application, the recycling department is seeking an additional $1,192.66 to cover the remaining costs for the tire recycling, disposal, and a certified freon removal. As we know, those are something that cost a little bit more. So her application, her request is for $1,192 so that we can get that grant from the PADEP. I'll put that in the form of a motion. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got the second there. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
Vote yes?
And I also vote yes. Okay, I'm moving on to item number 17, extinguishment of an easement, 38th and Pacific Avenue. Matt Waldinger.
Thank you. Westminster Development has petitioned the board to abandon a sanitary sewer easement that exists on their property located at the southeast corner of West 38th and Pacific Avenue. This easement does not contain a sanitary sewer line and will be in direct conflict with the location of their proposed office building. This easement was granted to the Sewer Authority in 1972 by the prior owners of the parcel. It was intended to provide a sewer connection to the properties to the east of what was then the Hills Plaza so that they could connect into the sewer on Pacific Avenue. Subsequent to that, in later years, another easement that's further north of the one we're talking about today was acquired by the authority, and a public sanitary sewer was installed in that easement further to the north. The easement that the developer is requesting to be extinguished never had a sewer line constructed within its limits. It would be the recommendation of the Planning and Development Department that this extinguishment easement be approved, or I'm sorry, extinguishment agreement be approved, as there is no longer a need to provide sanitary sewer to this location.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Just real quick,
Oh, I'm sorry.
we did review the document that was prepared by Westminster, and it was fine with respect to relinquishing the easement. I think I would note, too, is that the additional easement that was provided, I believe, is along a property line as opposed to bisecting a parcel. So it probably ultimately made more sense to put the line there than it did where they originally had an easement.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the extinguishment easement, Jeez, Matt, I can't say anything. I will make a motion to approve the agreement for the extinguishment of the easement.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
I figured.
I can say that easily.
Oh, okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I also vote yes.
And you know what, I will too. Okay. Yes. Item number 18, stormwater plan and maintenance agreement request for the Dave Hanlon Community Sports Complex. Millcreek Township School District is the developer. Matt Waldinger.
Thank you. Yeah, the developer is Millcreek Township School District. This is for the ball field expansion that they're looking at, the project that they're looking at behind the new multi-purpose field that they just installed. We did get approval from GPI on their stormwater management plan. It was approved and meets all the township's requirements. The school district has also provided us with a stormwater maintenance agreement on our required form. They have signed that and it is notarized. So I would recommend, or I'm sorry, the Planning and Development Department would recommend that the board approve the stormwater management plan and the stormwater maintenance agreement for this project.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We'll put them together as one, the agreement and the plan. Do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the stormwater management plan and the maintenance agreement.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And so do I.
And Mr. Chairman, I know the last time this issue came up at our board, there was some confusion among the public whether this was a township project or not. This is a school district project. This is simply an approval of their land development, previous was land development plan, this being their stormwater management plan, which we require of any other developer. So this is not our approval of the project, it's our approval of their plans for them to
Right.
build their own project. Just wanna-
Coincidentally, when you say that, I know that the school board, according to the news, the school board approved the construction of that last night at their meeting. I think their cost is $923,000 for the project, so just throwing that out there just for thought. So anyway, moving on to our next item, number 19, electrical supply agreements. Mr. Zaheski, do you have any information for us?
Yes, the township has many, many electrical accounts. Every street light you see, every traffic light, every flashing sign has its own meter. And Penelec, a lot of those were tied to Penelec being the supplier for the electricity. Well, Penelec is in the process of raising the rate if you don't make a choice for electricity. So we decided to go out and see if we could find a better deal for all our electrical usage. And as a result, WGL has quoted a rate of just under 4.3 cents per kilowatt hour for guaranteed for 24 months. This is going to save the township somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 a year on electrical usage. So it's my recommendation that we approve the agreements with WGL for the electric supply for 24 months.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I guess I would note that there are 3 agreements to be approved. There is their form agreement, their confirmation agreement, and then our addendum agreement, which incorporates the various standard provisions that the township puts in all the agreements that it enters into.
You're saying we should act on them separately?
You can act on them all together, but
as
that
one?
there's
Okay.
3, yes.
Good, okay. Okay. Do I have a motion on that? Boy, we have quite a few electric accounts here.
I make a motion to approve the electric supply agreement with WGL Electric Services and all of the encompassing agreements as noted by Mr. Shaw.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, item number 20, a memorandum of understanding with the Millcreek Township School District. This is for the Safe Schools Act. Mark Shaw?
Yes, this is an agreement required by the Safe Schools Act to be executed by the municipalities, police service, and the applicable school. It establishes procedures and protocols to be followed when certain specified incidents occur on school property, at any school-sponsored activity, or in a vehicle such as a school bus providing transportation to or from a school or school-sponsored activity. It establishes certain incidents that require the school to report them to police authorities, and certain incidents over which the school then has discretion over whether to report those incidents. It also has provisions governing the incidents involving students with disabilities, and it has provisions that cover emergency situations and provisions covering how law enforcement should respond to certain situations. This, again, is a standard kind of form agreement. There's a model that gets followed, that the various schools follow. The agreement that was on the agenda was an agreement with the Millcreek Township School District that they requested a couple of weeks ago. We received just today a nearly identical agreement from the Montessori Regional Charter School, again under the Safe School Act, and following the model form that they use. And we also expect there to be maybe a couple more stragglers coming in over the next several weeks with similar agreements, because all the schools have to do this. So I would recommend, after reviewing these, to approve both of the agreements with Montessori and the Millcreek Township School District, and authorize the Chief of Police to execute these agreements. And I would also suggest that maybe you would approve the execution of any additional similar agreements that the township receives to be executed by the chief, subject to my review, ensuring that those agreements are consistent and similar to the agreements that you've would previously approve. I would also, I guess, indicate that since we're going a little bit beyond what the agenda item may be described, it might be worth taking any public comment if anyone wants to comment on it.
Duly noted. Any public comment on this? This is for the Safe Schools Act requirement that we enter into agreements with the different schools, or the school districts, that is there. So we have Montessori and the Millcreek School District on this one right here, and then we may have Our Lady of Peace and St. Jude's.
Yeah, I think we're still probably expecting to get some in from the Catholic schools.
From the other schools there too, yes. So, okay. Any public comment on that? Being none, we'll note that for the record. Okay. Questions or comments among the board here? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the MOUs with the Millcreek Township School District and with the Montessori School.
Okay. Would you also include any future ones, as Mr. Shaw indicated?
I would think that would be probably a separate motion.
Do you want to do that separately? Okay. Okay, do I hear a second on the motion that Mr. Morgan has made?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Mark, do you suggest that we do another motion right now, or should we wait until they come in?
I think because they effectively have to be all the same, there's no reason not to authorize their execution now as they come in, subject to confirming that in fact they follow the same formatting and structure.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to authorize Chief of Police to enter into any additional MOUs with appropriate entities regarding the Safe Schools Act, subject to the review and approval of the solicitor.
Okay, well, here's a second on that.
I will second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Okay, item number 21 is enforcement action, and this is regarding property at 3104 West 38th. Mr. Shaw, you have some comments about this?
Yes, in May of 2017, the Township's code enforcement officers performed a property maintenance inspection of the structures located at 3104 West 38th Street in Erie, PA 16506. Multiple violations of the Township's property maintenance code and fire code were discovered, and the property was ultimately condemned. The violations continue to exist on the property, and a demolition order was issued on June 3 of 2019. The property was owned by a Terry Thayer Sr. However, Mr. Thayer has since passed away, and the property is now being managed by his son, who is also the executor of his estate, Terry Thayer. In an effort to amicably and quickly resolve the issues with the property, the township approached the executor and his attorney regarding the possibility of entering into an agreement with the township to enable us to demolish the home. They agreed to that, so the agreement before you for a vote is entered into by the township and Terry M. Thayer Jr. as executor of the estate of Terry M. Thayer Sr. In exchange for the township withdrawing the notices of violation against the property, Mr. Thayer will permit the township to demolish the structures on the property and file a lien against the property for the demolition costs and the attorney's fees and costs incurred in resolving the violations of the township's property maintenance and fire code. The township would agree not to take action to collect on the lien for a period of 1 year from the date of the agreement. and would also agree not to charge interest on the lien for that period of time. And in exchange, Mr. Thayer will take all reasonable efforts to sell the property so that the township may timely recover the costs associated with resolving the violations, essentially giving them a window to sell it of a year, and if they don't sell it, then we can take action to try to collect. I would recommend approval of the agreement, and it has already been signed by Mr. Thayer.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
I just want to comment that I think the work of our Planning Development Department, and Mr. Waldinger, and especially our Chief Code Enforcement Officer, Caleb Dixon, they're doing great work to try and address blighted and dilapidated structures in our community. So this is a great example of working with property owners and trying to...
Caleb deserves all the credit for this one.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that was long overdue. So, okay, with that said, do I hear a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the enforcement action.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
How about yes?
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes on that. Okay, item number 22 is communications, starting with the treasurer. Mr. Zahesky, do you have anything?
I just note that an auditor from the PA Auditor General's office is going to be in to review our liquid fuels reporting
Okay.
either late this week or first part of next week.
Right, this is an annual event? that they
At
added?
least every other year.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, that's all then?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, do you have anything?
I have a hiring request from our Human Resources
Okay.
office. This would be to fill a vacancy in our Fleet Maintenance Bureau. This would be basically hiring a new mechanic. Diane Lyons puts forth a recommendation of Clyde Kendall at a hire date of July 8th, 2019, at a starting rate of $19.85. Clyde comes to us with experience from student transportation. His offer would be contingent upon successful completion of pre-employment screenings that are currently in progress. And I put that
Okay.
for a motion to approve the hiring of Kyle Kendall
Okay.
as a township mechanic.
Okay, I'll second that action there. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, you have anything else, John?
I think that's it for me.
Okay. Okay, let's see here. We had executive sessions regarding legal matters on June the 13th and June the 20th. And let's see here, I just have an announcement. I'm going to try to be brief as possible, but the 4th of July parade is next Thursday, July 4th, of course.
Independence Day is on July 4th this
Yes,
year,
they
huh?
do have it on July 4th, that we don't move that one. These memos here come from the police department and also from Ashley Marceller, our parks director, who serves on the parade committee. Keep in mind, first of all, this is not a Millcreek Township function. This is something the American Legion does and the parade committee. The parade starts at 9:45 a.m. and it starts over at 12th and Marshall. It starts with a bang of a cannon. I think anybody who's been going to the parade for the last 54 years, which is how old it is, knows that. And just as an advisory statement, the cannon will fire multiple times along the parade route. If you have sensitive hearing or you have children with sensitive hearing, please wear earmuffs or earplugs or whatever, and just keep that in mind. Of course, there are sirens from the fire trucks and every other emergency vehicle that's out there. West 12th Street will be closed from Peninsula Drive to Grant Avenue from 8 o'clock in the morning until the conclusion of the parade. The parade is approximately 1 mile long and takes about 2.5 hours to walk. We encourage everyone to arrive early and plan ahead. There is a quiet zone on West 12th Street, and this is over near the reviewing stand. It's between Montpelier Avenue and the reviewing stand, which is at the American Legion. So that is a quiet area. If you prefer to be in that area, please go there. Bring your lawn chairs and cooler, and make sure you bring water, because if it's hot, you'll need it out there because you're in the sun most of the way. Also, for the people that live in the area, that reside in the area, both sides of 12th Street, but I'm going to talk about the south side of 12th Street. As you know, that you'll have not difficulty, but your access to your homes if you live south of 12th Street between Shank Avenue and all the way over to Marshall Drive. You're requested to head over to Shank Avenue. There are ways to get all the way over there. There are police officers that will direct you to get you out of there. That will be your only way in and your only way out. I know we've had people in the past that have complained about this. This is the way in and out. We're not blocking you out of there. There are ways to get in and out. Emergency vehicles will get in there if they have to. They will find their way in there no matter what. So we do apologize for any inconvenience this causes, but this is what's happened here since the closure of Powell Avenue. Also, anybody on the north side of those streets there, please keep in mind that the traffic when the parade is done is jammed up. Westlake Road, once 12th Street is closed, becomes a nightmare. It backs up both east and westbound lanes, especially when the parade is concluded. So it's advised if you can stay out of the area, if you're not inclined to be in it, stay out of the area. Sorry to put it that way. Maybe go somewhere for a while. The parade's done probably about 1:30 or so, somewhere around that time. That way I'll have better traffic. Take 26th Street if you need. So we will have a press announcement about this closer to the parade. Yeah, the route, I do have the parade route there. Like I said, it goes on 12th Street from Marshall Drive all the way over to Grant Avenue, and actually just beyond that to Shank Avenue.
I think the most important thing, though, is for any of the kids out there, candy starts to get sparse once you get west of like Powell Avenue. So make sure your kids, make sure your parents are east of Powell.
Yes.
A lot of politicians run out of candy once they get past. Not us.
Yeah, oh, we would never do that.
But a lot of
No.
politicians run out of candy once they don't plan accordingly.
plan
They're used to
accordingly,
these like
yes.
small city parades.
Yes, yeah, this is a big one here. So, anyway, we'll have a press announcement about this probably the week of the parade itself, probably on the 2nd or 3rd, just to remind everybody. And please, enjoy the 4th of July, be safe out there, just have fun, remember what it's about. That's all I have. Jim?
Boy, that's a tough
I'm
act
sorry.
to follow. How do I
Sorry.
top the 4th of July parade? Simple training request from the Chief of Police, Scott Height.
They just want candy? Is that what they want? No?
Oh, always. It's always good. Mr. Height, Chief Height is requesting approval for 7 patrol officers to attend the Looking Beyond the Traffic Stop training program at the Pennsylvania State Police Northwest Training Center on July 30th and 31st. There is no cost for the course. Travel will be by department vehicles, and there is no overtime required to maintain staffing levels.
That's your personal guarantee?
You have my word on that.
Okay,
Put that in the form of a motion.
okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes, too.
That
Okay.
is all I have from the
Good.
police department.
You have one more
Oh,
here.
there's one more?
Yeah. Probationary period is completed, the last one.
Okay, it's up now.
Yep.
Yes, I spoke with the chief about this. Patrolman Mackenzie Kranz will have successfully completed his 1-year probationary period on June 29th. Based on the recommendations of his training officers and immediate supervisors, Chief Height is requesting that Patrolman Kranz be elevated to Class D status effective June 29th.
Okay.
And I will put that in the form of a motion.
Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes.
That's all I have from the police.
Okay. Mr. Shaw, do you have anything?
Nothing further on my end.
Cheryl, anything? Matt Waldinger,
Nothing further.
anything else here? Okay. Now we're at the part of citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard? If you would identify yourself, sir, for the record.
My name is Dave Szymanowski, 823 Oregon Avenue, and I can very well attest on July 4th, the traffic situation there. I've been through that many times.
Oh, you know what I'm talking
Westlake
about.
Road is indeed a zoo afterwards.
Yes.
But just a couple things. I'm not sure if it's the jurisdiction of Millcreek in regard to the roundabout on Millfair and Westlake Road. There continues to be difficulty in regard to the speed of people going through the circle, and it really creates difficulty for people who are handicapped. So I'm just requesting that maybe if it is the Millcreek's jurisdiction, police-wise, that they check on it more frequently. And, or if there's, I don't know if you could put out one of those speed signs, you know, that might help. But it has created difficulty for some people.
Right.
So I want to bring that up. Also in regard to traffic circles, I'm not sure if in Millcreek we're going to have additional ones, you know, at some point. I have no problem with traffic circles. My concern is with pedestrians. Right now, the way they put the crosswalks, they put it too close to the actual circle. Now, for somebody who is blind or some other handicaps, the difficulty becomes being that close to the circle. The noise to signal ratio is horrible. So the individual trying to get across there, it becomes confusion because it essentially becomes static, if you want to put it in those terms. So PennDOT, you know, if you could intercede or something, that they make it at least 50 feet away from the edge of the traffic circle. PennDOT has done some good things there, but for me, it's the issue of let's make everything as safe as possible. And I think just that little bit of change can mean the difference and possibly a potential life.
I will say we did advocate for those kinds of things to be addressed in this roundabout, and essentially at the time, if I recall correctly, you know, PennDOT has design specs they run by the FHWA and their ADA specialists, and we were informed that the way they were doing it was the best and safest way for their standards. So we have asked those questions and brought those things up, because I tend to agree with you.
I just think, because I've seen the people and I've helped the people and I've gone there just myself, just to do it both driving and as a pedestrian to see the difference in how it is. So just moving it a little, just now for areas of traffic circles where it's very lightly traveled as far as pedestrians, probably the present setup is okay, but for heavily pedestrian traffic.
Right.
And the last thing, going back to our other meetings, I certainly like to see reopen the issue in regard to the MTA and paying the full amount that was requested. And I'm not going to go, you know, we don't need to renegotiate everything that was said in past meetings. But Supervisor Morgan and Supervisor Grow, I heard from them quite a bit about their viewpoints on things. But from Supervisor Bach, I haven't heard much, so I would certainly like to hear what he has to say about this issue.
About the EMTA issue?
Yeah, the EMTA and the amount, you know, the full funding versus the amount of money that has been given or will be given, the 2,000 something.
Right.
What are your thoughts and rationale for however, you know, you vote?
That amount that we approved that on March 12th at our meeting, that was unanimously approved by the board. And at the time, that was what we deemed an appropriate amount. Since then, we have requested some documentation from EMTA, specific documentation regarding different things, routes, funding, proof that they've requested, you know, contributions from other municipalities, et cetera. To my knowledge, to date, we have not received everything that we requested. To me, that is an important part of the puzzle, to receive that information. Obviously, we all value, you know, the lift service and the public transportation itself. So I think, you know, currently that's still where I'm at with it. You know, I'm still open to discussing it, but it appears that EMTA, for whatever reason, was unable to provide us with, you know, the documentation we requested. And so that's where we're at for this year. So, you know, certainly 2020 is another year, and it can be, you know, reopened for discussion at that point.
Okay, I appreciate your
Sure.
comments. Connie, I'll try to end. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Connie Shu, and I'm on West Street, actually not far from the fire department up there on West Street.
Okay.
And to follow up on a couple things that Dave was just saying is that I've been one of those too. I've tried that roundabout, and I've actually put a couple articles in the paper about it. Anyway, I've tried crossing there, and I can't do it. And the reason being, and I did go to the Fairview meetings. I was living out there at the time, and I've been unable to because the cars don't always stop, and there's no way to know that they stop. The circle, the traffic is moving. I can't see the traffic, and it's kind of funny because the sign says, "Caution, look both ways before crossing. Cars may not stop." And I'm kind of scared after I hear that to just put out my cane and cross, not knowing that those cars have stopped.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine, if you were standing there, imagine that the cars are going around in a circle, so it's not that you can even hear the cars stopped because
Okay.
other cars are still moving. There's
Yeah.
no way to know that those cars have stopped.
Okay.
And I can't do it. I mean, if you can imagine, go try it yourself. Close your eyes and pretend you're going to put out a cane and cross there, and I guarantee you won't do it.
That's right.
Anyway, and I am also the president of the National Federation, well, actually, it's Erie County chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. Long title. Anyway, we do have members that live in Millcreek and use the bus system, the lift system. We have meetings each month, etc. And we also have at least one person that lives in that roundabout area who's nearly been hit a few times. At least one time we had a TV crew out there in Channel 12 caught it on camera that she was nearly hit. Someday somebody is going to be hit there if the traffic is not slowed down or something.
Okay.
Also getting on to the issue of the funding for EMTA, we do hope to see that increased. I mean, there's been a lot of people here from Voices for Independence and such, but we also have the Northwest Pennsylvania Site Center in Millcreek too. So there's a lot of blind people from my chapter, from all over Millcreek and so forth. There's a lot of us using it, so I do hope
Okay.
that funding comes up. And I did think that EMTA had those figures. I went to some of their meetings too, and I heard them mention how many rides and how many people use the service in Millcreek. So I don't know why you're not getting those particular figures.
Well, we do have them.
You do have those?
We don't, but
Uh-huh.
it's the figures they've been quoting are not Mill Creek specific. They're actual route wide, so they're actually they're not giving us information on Mill Creek boarding and the lightings. They're giving us the information for entire route. So, for example, part of their data they provided us included the entire route of Corey as a Mill Creek route. So they're not providing information of Mill Creek specific ridership. They're providing route-wide ridership. So
Yeah.
one of the things they've quoted to us is that 54% of their riders are in Mill Creek, which actually all the routes they quote for that are actually primarily city routes that happen to pass through Mill Creek. So that's the information that we'd like to actually have them parse out.
Yeah, I would imagine if they want to get that kind of information, they'll have to put some sort of additional way of counting that, of changing over, you know, because when I've ridden, you know, usually you get your card punched and so
Right.
forth. There's not a way offhand that they can count them unless they ask their drivers to
Right.
switch over. When
Yeah,
you
you're right.
get-
They're very outdated in their technology on their buses,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the past 5, 6 years, I think maybe even longer, we have traditionally contributed $20,000. And this is a year where we're looking at that, needing information. You know, for the past time, we have not, and now this is the year it's being asked, so.
Well, I can assure you, if I could go out and get a car, I wouldn't be here advocating quite so much
I understand.
for it. But
I
I don't
understand.
think that's going to happen too soon.
Okay, well, yeah, we never know. But
Okay.
I think the board has made its, you know, the majority of the board has made its decision that this matter is complete, and there's no further action going to be taken. Okay?
And I just want to further clarify that the contributions of local municipalities are not, the service provided municipalities aren't tied to their contribution. So we don't receive service because we made a donation in the past. It's a countywide system. They could reevaluate routes and cancel routes in Millcreek, whether we give them 20,000 or 50,000, or, I mean, I think there's been a really false sense perpetuated by their executive director that it's a pay-to-play system, and it's not.
Yeah, I never took it that way. I mean, I heard comments to that effect. I just, as a citizen, I just think the amount requested is fair, a fair and reasonable amount, even without additional data. So that's
Yeah.
fine. Just as another point of information, I think everyone really knows that come July 1st, the broker system is gonna be
Mhm.
started, they're gonna select brokers,
Oh,
who
yeah.
they're gonna be, and I found out that they have a 90-day period where they get with each other and negotiate what's gonna, be. So I don't see things changing for another 90 days after July 1st.
Mhm.
But after that, who knows what's gonna happen, and I think it's potentially to the detriment of us here in Erie, holiday recovery.
Yes.
Not just Millcreek, but all of it.
Oh, it's a very big concern, yes. And we've,
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add, with respect to the roundabouts, I would reach out to PennDOT, because that's really a PennDOT designed roundabout and so forth,
So we're just asking for
Yeah,
additional assistance.
Sure.
Because
yeah.
PennDOT hasn't been super
Yeah.
responsive.
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
wouldn't be
I'm
difficult.
stunned by that.
On behalf of my chapter, I did file a grievance, and it was denied, and I am trying to file with the Department of Justice, but
Okay.
they're not very quick to act.
Yes.
Well, again, I can say we did advocate for further design reviews at the time, and I believe what PennDOT's, August says their ADA specialists incorporate into that design was a push-button lighting system, I believe, Matt? Is that what they determined was the appropriate, when we brought that concern up? But as far as speed enforcement, it wouldn't be a problem for us to put that on the rotation for our officers, I don't think.
Well, like this winter, it's
There's-
automated by, going under it, however, whether it's by sight, breaking a signal. But the wind moved it all around, so that one of them didn't work. They eventually fixed it, but I don't know how well it's fixed. I mean, especially given Erie's winters and the amount of wind
Right.
we have, so
And
that's
our-
just a point.
Well, our chapter member that lived there
Passel.
actually,
That's
Yeah.
Lominski, yes.
she had to walk in the circle because there was no snow cleared either, and had to walk in the circle with the traffic, which is pretty dangerous, too.
And see, even, with the cane, Connie was mentioning how she can't discern what's going on, but even Paso with her dog, the dog gets confused.
Yeah.
With all of a sudden the car's starting to rush and whether to go or not, so
Okay. Okay,
Just a little bit of change can make a big difference.
okay.
But we
Thank you
are
for your
working
comments.
on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Is there any other citizens to be heard? Being none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn at 8:16.
So moved?
Okay.